Morning, sir. I'd like to ask you another question about Iraq. It's been another bloody day there. The last several weeks have been 40, 50, 60 bodies a day. We've been talking for the last several months about Iraq being on the brink of a civil war. I'd like to ask you if it's not time to start talking about Iraq as being in a civil war, and if it's not, what's the threshold?
Yeah, well, it seems like it's pretty easy to speculate from over here about the conditions on the ground. So what I do is I talk to people like our ambassador and General Casey, which I just did this morning. And they and the Iraqi government just don't agree with the hypothesis it is a civil war. They believe that there's no question violence. They believe that Al-Qaeda is still creating havoc. They know there's people taking reprisal. Confident there's still Saddamists who are threatening people and carrying out attacks. But they also believe that that the Baghdad security plan is making progress. There was a lot of discussion about Al-Anbar province recently, and spent some time talking with our commanders. No question it's a dangerous place. It's a place where Al-Qaeda is really trying to root themselves. It's a place from which they'd like to operate. You know, it's business about Al-Qaeda, Al-Anbar's loss. It's just not the case. That's not what our commanders think. So to answer your question, there's no question it's tough. What I look for is that whether or not the unity government's moving forward, whether or not they have a political plan to resolve issues such as oil and federalism, whether or not they're willing to reconcile, and whether or not Iraqi troops and Iraqi police are doing their jobs.
But how do you measure progress with a body count like that?
Well, one way you do it is you measure progress based upon the resilience of the Iraqi people. Do they want there to be a unity government? Or are they splitting up into, factions of people warring with the head leaders with different alternatives of governing styles and different philosophies? The unity government's intact. It's working forward. They're making tough decisions. And we'll stay with them. We'll stay with them because success in Iraq is important for this country. We're constantly changing our tactics. We're constantly adapting to the enemy. We're constantly saying, here's the way forward. We want to work with you. But this is really the big challenge of the 21st century. Whether or not this country and allies are willing to stand with moderate people in order to fight off extremists. It is the challenge. I said the other night in a speech, this is like the ideological war of the 21st century, and I believe it. And I believe that if we leave that region, if we don't help democracy prevail, then our children and grandchildren will be faced with an unbelievable, chaotic, and dangerous situation in the Middle East. Imagine an enemy that can't stand what we believe in, getting a hold of oil resources, and taking a bunch of oil off the market in order to have an economic punishment. You go ahead and do this, and if you don't, we'll punish you economically. Or imagine a Middle East with an Iran with a nuclear weapon threatening free nations and trying to promote their vision of extremism through Hezbollah. I find it interesting that young democracies are being challenged by extremists. I also take great hope in the fact that by far the vast majority of people want normalcy and want peace, including in Iraq. That there is a deep desire for people to raise their children in a peaceful world. The desire for mothers to have the best for their child. And it's not, this isn't, the Americans, you gotta understand, this is universal. And the idea of just saying, well, that's not important for us, to me, or the future of the country is just not acceptable. And I know it's tough in Iraq. Of course it's tough in Iraq, because an enemy is trying to stop this new democracy. Just like people are trying to stop the development of a Palestinian state, which I strongly support. Or people trying to undermine the Lebanese democracy. And the reason why is because the ideologues understand that liberty will trump their dark vision of the world every time. And that's why I call it an ideological struggle. And it's a necessary struggle. And it's a vital struggle.